Okay.
All
Well,
right, yeah, I think we're live.
now it's setting.
We're on. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the latest Poli Sci Quick Bites episode. I'm Dr. Best, and I'm joined today by Dr. Woodson, our expert on all things relating to the Constitution and the judiciary. So today we're talking about the latest sort of big news coming out of Texas. Yesterday, the Texas abortion law that has been getting a lot of attention took effect. And with the court sort of failing to take action at that time until overnight to sort of weigh in on that. This law is interesting because it will ban, effectively, it's going to ban almost all abortions in Texas. 85% of abortions in Texas take place after the 6-week mark, which is what this ban pertains to. And that's likely going to sort of limit what's available for those looking for an abortion prior to that point. And it has a really interesting means of enforcement. And so with that, I'm going to turn it to Professor Woodson. Can you explain to us what this enforcement mechanism that's so weird looks like?
Well, sure. Yes. So normally if you want to end something you don't like as a government, you just ban it. And then the police enforce it or something. But Texas decided to go a different route with this, where essentially they have private citizens will enforce it. And so private citizens wander around Texas, and then if they see someone helping someone else get an abortion, they file a lawsuit, and then I guess they get some money out of it. And then that's the enforcement mechanism, is through private citizens. And that sounds a little absurd and weird, but the whole reason for that is because they wanted to make it harder for the Supreme Court to stop it. So Texas is not the first state that has passed strict abortion bans or limits. And lots of Republican states have passed those laws because essentially they think the new, more conservative Supreme Court after the Trump nominees or appointments will be conservative and overturn Roe v. Wade. And so for that to happen, some state has to ban abortion. Case makes it up to the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court does whatever they're going to do. And so there's a case working through the system right now where they're doing that. Except what happens is all these states ban abortion or limit abortion to a great extent, and then those laws get stayed to where they will not be what's the right word? Won't take effect. And so the reason that Texas didn't just ban abortion after, was it 6 weeks, right? Yeah, after 6 weeks, and did it this weird sort of private citizen enforcement mechanism, is it makes it harder for the court to issue a stay. Because we don't need to get into the details, but there's these weird rules about what type of stuff courts are allowed to hear, what type of decisions courts are allowed to hear, because they can't just do whatever they want. Wait a second. They're not supposed to do whatever they want. They usually can, but they're not supposed to. And so there's all these rules. And so this Texas law was essentially designed to basically be a loophole through which a normal abortion law could easily be stayed by the Supreme Court, because this law clearly violates Roe v. Wade, and everyone knows it. And so normally it would be stayed, but they did this weird sort of way as a loophole to get around that, because arguably this law doesn't meet the requirements that is generally necessary for the court to issue a stay. So it was designed this way to meet a loophole, so it'd be harder for the court to stay, for the courts to prevent it from going into effect.
All right, thank you. Yes, this law raises a lot of questions. But I think with this episode, one of the things that we had talked about focusing on was, what does this mean? Well, two things, right? What does this mean for the future of Roe v. Wade? Does this mean that Roe v. Wade is dead? And two, what does this mean for this particular mechanism? Are we going to see this mechanism of what critics are calling vigilante justice, vigilante enforcement? Are we going to see that used in areas like campaign finance or gun laws in states that might want to address those types of issues?
Well, we might see states try. That's always possible. States have almost certainly tried to do this type of thing before, but it probably won't be successful because, like I said, there are sort of lots of rules and stuff about what type of cases courts are supposed to hear, what type of like cases where they can issue a stay and things like that. But those rules are very flexible. And if the court wants to, they can issue a stay. If they don't want to, they won't. And they will come up with some reason for why they're not supposed to issue a stay, but it really just comes down to ideology. So, like, amazingly enough, the 5 most conservative justices on the court all thought that this abortion law did not meet the legalistic criteria to issue a stay. And the 3 liberals plus the moderate, well, whatever Roberts is, plus whatever Roberts is at this point, they went the other way. And so it's the same voting coalition for like as every other single decision they make, that's divided at least, because this is really just about ideology. These 5 justices don't like Roe v. Wade, probably are going to issue a decision sometime in the end of this year, early next year sometime, that will limit Roe v. Wade, maybe overturn Roe v. Wade. We don't really know. But this, like, you know, like, so if like if New York or whatever, or some random liberal state decided to try to use this as a way to enforce some handgun ban or something like that, yeah, the 5 conservative justices on the court would just have a different opinion and say, well, of course this is different because of this and this reason, and they would issue a stay. Because these process arguments when it comes to the Supreme Court are almost always excuses, in that, like, if a court doesn't hear a case or hears a case and it's sort of, but when they make these decisions, like, it's much of it's just ideology, where they're just, you know, the issue would depend. So I would just put it that way. It's all ideology. And if it was a different issue where the conservatives didn't like the law, they would just issue a stay and say, we don't really care about the processy stuff. We're just going to issue a stay because that's what we're going to do.
Interesting. I mean, that seems pretty troubling for the concept of a depoliticized court. And I know that's been a priority of Roberts, but Roberts has also, if I understand it correctly, Chief Justice Roberts has also opposed abortion rights in the past. So do you think that his vote with the liberal minority in this case, do you think that might have been because he doesn't want the court to be a politicized body or to be perceived as a politicized body? And where do you think we're going in that respect, in terms of respect for the court and its politicization?
Well, Roberts has been very well, yeah, he's been the sort of conservative justice so like Roberts is conservative in like his judicial philosophy and all that sort of stuff. But he recognizes that, like, you know, if we go too far, there's going to be a ton of backlash. And so, like, he is on these sorts of issues, on Trump issues as well, he sort of is sided with the liberals. And so I guess, I think it depends on what they do with abortion, and like in the actual abortion decision that's going to come up into this year, early next year sometime, where if they do something like overturn Roe v. Wade, or like severely sort of gut it or something like that, then yeah, the court's not going to be depoliticized. That's just going to lead to court packing, and well, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, if that happens, the Democrats are going to try to pack the court most likely, and they'll have tons of support. And so, like, yeah, I would say it's not good for the depoliticization of the court, but also, you know, that wasn't good before this either, because the court is, and just like our politics is sort of polarizing and sort of everybody's getting mad at everyone else and everyone's all angry all the time. The court used to be able to stay out of that stuff to some degree, but not anymore. Sort of perceived politicization of the court, I think is, I guess I shouldn't say, I'm fairly sure there's evidence that's gone up. I'd have to look it up again, but I remember seeing evidence that it's going up, like confidence in the court is going down. It's sort of being affected with the same sort of negative effects that is affecting the rest of our government and sort of trust in government and things like that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for answering some questions on this. Hopefully, those of you watching have a little bit more sort of clarity about what the implications of this will be. Feel free to drop your questions and comments in the comment section.
We did miss one question. You had a second, the second part of your second question I never answered about Roe v. Wade, which I'm fairly sure is a very important sort of clarification to make.
Definitely needs great clarification.
Yeah. This decision does not overturn Roe v. Wade. This decision does not affect Roe v. Wade at all. That is a decision that will come up later. Again, I forgot which particular state. One of the southern states, they did some sort of, Mississippi has an abortion law that will be heard by the court. And that's the one, that decision is the one that's going to determine the future of Roe, at least the short-term one. And so like the Texas law maybe will stay in effect till then, but like if they declare that Mississippi law unconstitutional, this Texas law will almost certainly also be declared unconstitutional. And so like we need to wait until then, until that decision, until we really know whether Roe survives or to what extent Roe survives and things like that. This decision, well, I'll put it this way. So prior to Wednesday, I've always said in class and things like, there's no way they're going to overturn Roe v. Wade. They're not going to be that ridiculous. They're not going to just do that initially out the top. They meant like chip away at it, make abortion protection, the right to choose less and less and less over time. But I just didn't expect them to go all out against Roe. But this not issuing a stay in Texas does seem to suggest that maybe they are going that route. Maybe they will actually overturn Roe v. Wade or completely gut it. And maybe they will allow that Mississippi law to be, it'll be declared constitutional. So that, it's, the actual Texas decision does not mean Roe v. Wade is overturned. It just makes it more likely that in the future, the court may actually vote that way, where I never thought they would have done that right now, at least. I thought they would have done that like 5 to 10 years from now, but not right now.
Even this time, right, it was just the failure to impose a stay, right? It was just the decision this time was just the court saying we're not going to impose a stay to allow more time for lower courts to consider this. Is that correct? That's a correct characterization or fair characterization?
Well, no, it's not. They're not issuing a stay. I don't think it's necessarily for lower courts to reconsider this. It was just sort of a procedural. The decision itself was almost certainly based on just like the procedural quirk of, Texas did this weird enforcement mechanism, and so they decided they weren't going to issue a stay. And also probably since they were coming up with this decision anyway, they're like, we'll just wait a few months and then we'll come out with our big abortion decision. And sort of because they probably don't really know what they're going to do yet. Because, this is like if they overturn Roe v. Wade, it'll be one of the most momentous sort of political things for decades that will like have massive effects on, it'll have massive effects on who wins elections and coalitions and electoral realignments. It'll be just massive. At least that's what I think would happen.
But you view this decision not to impose a stay this time as indicative that there's more support than you previously thought for overturning Roe.
Yeah, like everybody knows the 5 conservative justices and even John Roberts think Roe v. Wade was wrongly decided. Like that's not in question. It's just a matter of whether they're willing to pull the trigger. And like Roberts was never going to pull the trigger. He'll just sort of chop away at it because that's what Roberts would do. But like the 5 conservative justices, like Clarence Thomas would do it. Like 2 or 3 of them we know would have overturned Roe v. Wade. It's just if sort of like Kavanaugh and I guess Barrett and probably Gorsuch are maybe the ones we don't really know for sure. But this just suggests that, maybe they will.
All right. With important sort of, I imagine, stare decisis issues coming up in that. But yeah, so it sounds like there will be some more relevant cases coming down the line with that decision for the Mississippi case. And so maybe we'll be back on Quick Bites in a few months talking about that.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen there. It'll be fun.
All right. Well, thanks to everybody for tuning in. And yeah, again, just if you have questions or comments that we didn't address and want to drop them in the comments on this, please do it. And, let us know what else you'd like us to talk about. So, all right.
All right. Thank you. Oh, I guess I have to end this, don't I?
Oh, you do.